They fired me effective immediately. The words came across that polished conference table delivered with the casual authority of someone who'd never spent a day on a factory floor. Jessica Morgan, the newly appointed CEO of Apex Manufacturing, didn't even look up from her tablet when she said it. Mid-20s sharp blazer, McKinsey consultant written all over her posture. She was scrolling through spreadsheets, red stylus in hand, circling line items like they were personal enemies. I'm Marcus Thompson, 56 years old, and I've spent the last 34 years building quality control systems that actually work. Not the kind that look good in PowerPoint presentations, but the kind that keep 1,200 people employed and $85 million in orders flowing through 6 facilities across 3 states. 4 years in the Marines, then 30 years at Ford Motor Company, and finally 4 years building something better here at Apex. My wife Susan had been through enough with her cancer treatment last year. The medical bills were finally under control, and I was 18 months away from a comfortable retirement when this MBA decided my expertise was expendable. Our son Kevin, 28, works as a software engineer at Tesla. He'd been telling me for months that the automotive industry was changing, that experience didn't matter as much as adapting to new technology. Maybe he was right, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I sat there, hands flat on the table, watching Jessica perform what she clearly thought was decisive leadership. Transition will be immediate, she continued, still not making eye contact. We're bringing quality systems management in-house, more efficient, better cost control. Behind her sat 2 people I'd never seen before. A nervous woman from HR clutching her tablet and a younger guy in an expensive suit who had consultant written all over him. No one from operations. No one who'd ever walked a production floor, just Jessica and her imported expertise. She finally looked up, expression somewhere between bored and irritated, like I was wasting her valuable time by still breathing. Before you go, she said, tapping her stylus against the tablet, hand over the quality prediction system. All of it. Access credentials, source code, documentation. We need everything by end of business today. The room went quiet. The HR woman shifted in her seat. The consultant stopped typing on his laptop. I didn't move, just sat there keeping my face neutral, letting the silence stretch. In the Marines, we learned that silence is a weapon. Let the other guy fill the void and reveal their position. Jessica's eyebrow raised slightly. Is there a problem? I smiled. The kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. I'm afraid I can't do that. Her stylus stopped mid-tap. Excuse me? The system, I continued, voice steady and professional. It's not yours to take. Jessica's confident posture shifted just slightly. A flicker of confusion crossed her face before the corporate mask returned. We paid for development. That makes it company property. I shook my head slowly. You paid for operational access, not ownership. The distinction is outlined clearly in Section 7 of your service agreement. The consultant leaned forward, whispering something to Jessica. She waved him off, eyes locked on mine. This is absurd. You can't hold company infrastructure hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage, I replied. I'm simply clarifying what you legally control, which as of this moment is absolutely nothing. What Jessica Morgan didn't know, what her consultant and her HR team and her entire cost optimization plan had completely missed, was that the AI quality prediction system running Apex's entire operation wasn't software sitting on their servers. It was custom-built infrastructure I owned personally, licensed for their use, controlled from hardware they'd never seen. And when they terminated my contract 3 minutes ago, they just disconnected themselves from the only thing keeping their quality metrics from collapsing. In 72 hours, that oversight would cost them everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and show you exactly how a former Marine with 34 years of automotive experience got fired by someone who thought quality control was just an app on a dashboard. I started at Ford right out of the Marines back when American manufacturing meant something. Desert Storm taught me about systems thinking and contingency planning. You don't just execute the mission, you prepare for every way it could go wrong. That mindset served me well on the factory floor. Spent 12 years on the production line before moving into quality systems. Learned early that manufacturing isn't about dashboards and data visualization. It's about understanding how physical processes interact with control systems in real time, under real pressure. Every defect has a root cause. Every failure pattern tells a story. You just have to know how to listen. When Ford started their efficiency improvements in 2019, I saw the writing on the wall. Watched 600 good people lose their jobs because some consultant convinced management they could run the same production with half the workforce. Susan and I talked about it over dinner one night. The company that built my career was forgetting what made it great. That's when I went independent. Built my first custom quality prediction system in 2020 for a Tier 2 supplier in Michigan. Word spread quietly through industry circles. The kind of reputation that gets you calls when someone's operation is falling apart and conventional solutions have failed. I don't have a fancy LinkedIn profile. Don't post about Industry 400 synergies or digital transformation journeys. My clients find me when their systems are broken and their MBA consultants have no clue how to fix them. That's how I ended up working with Apex Manufacturing 4 years ago. George Martinez, their VP of operations at the time, called me on a Thursday afternoon. His voice had the tight edge of someone staring at disaster. "Mac, we just failed our third quality audit in 6 months," he said. "GM contracts are threatening cancellation. I need someone who understands how this actually works, not another consultant who learned manufacturing from case studies." George was old school, came up through the ranks like me. Former Navy, spent years running production before moving into management. He understood that behind every clean dashboard and automated report, there's physical equipment that has to function flawlessly. When I walked into Apex's main facility that first day, the chaos was immediately obvious. Quality control running blind because their vision systems couldn't talk to their measurement stations. Predictive maintenance alerts going nowhere because nobody knew how to interpret the data. Defect rates sitting at 3.2% when industry standard was under 1%. "We've got 5 different quality platforms that don't communicate," George explained, walking me through the production floor. Assembly uses one system. Final inspection uses another. Statistical process control is basically manual. Every shift change, we lose 2 hours just trying to synchronize operations. The waste was staggering. Parts moving through inspection twice because the first system didn't talk to the second. Maintenance schedules based on calendar dates instead of actual machine performance. Workers making decisions with information that was hours old. It reminded me of the supply chain disasters I'd seen in Kuwait, where good people were hamstrung by systems that couldn't communicate with each other. I spent the next 18 months building them a real system, not some off-the-shelf package that kind of works if you bend your entire operation to fit it. Custom algorithms that learned the specific rhythms of their 6 facilities. Predictive quality monitoring that caught defects 72 hours before they happened. Real-time statistical process control that adjusted parameters automatically. The military taught me about redundancy and fail-safes. Every critical system needed a backup. Every data point needed verification. I built Apex's quality network the same way we planned operations in Desert Storm, assuming Murphy's Law would kick in at the worst possible moment. Susan would find me in the garage workshop at midnight, surrounded by circuit boards and testing equipment. "You're obsessing again," she'd say, bringing me coffee and sitting on the old stool I kept beside the workbench. "It has to work perfectly," I'd tell her. "These people are counting on me. Their jobs, their families, everything depends on this system functioning when it's supposed to." She understood. After 28 years of marriage, she knew I didn't do anything halfway. When our son Kevin was born, I read every parenting book I could find. When she got her cancer diagnosis, I became an expert on treatment options and insurance protocols. Now I was building something that would keep 1,200 people employed. The results were immediate and measurable. Defect rates dropped from 3.2% to 0.2%. 0 customer complaints for 18 consecutive months. Quality metrics that made their OEM customers actually compliment them. Annual savings of $2.8 million from prevented defects and reduced waste. But the real breakthrough wasn't just the numbers. It was watching floor supervisors like Danny Martinez gain confidence as the system gave them real-time information they could trust. Seeing maintenance crews prevent failures instead of just reacting to breakdowns. Watching the entire operation synchronize like a well-trained unit. George would send me detailed quarterly reports, not corporate thank you notes, but substantive analysis of quality improvements and cost reductions. He understood what we'd built together. More importantly, he respected the boundaries we'd established. The contract was crystal clear because I'd learned this lesson the hard way years ago. Early in my independent career, I'd built a custom system for a parts supplier in Ohio. When they got bought out by a larger company, the new owners assumed they owned everything on their property, including my intellectual property. It took 8 months and $40,000 in legal fees to get my system back. Never again. From then on, every client licensed operational access to my system. I retained complete ownership of all source code, algorithms, and infrastructure. George signed without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. "Mac, you're not just a vendor," he told me during one of our quarterly reviews. "You're a strategic partner. This system isn't just running our quality control, it's defining our competitive advantage. Why would I want to mess with something that works this well?" For 4 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on schedule. The system performed exactly as designed. George would call occasionally with questions about capacity expansion or new equipment integration, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Kevin would visit during holidays, and I'd show him the monitoring displays in my workshop. Real-time data flowing from 6 facilities across 3 states, all coordinated through hardware I'd built by hand. He was impressed, but skeptical. "Dad, this is incredible. But what happens when you retire? You can't take this system with you forever." He had a point. I was 56, and Susan and I had been talking about retirement in a couple of years. The cancer treatment was behind us, but the medical bills had eaten into our savings. The Apex contract was funding our retirement security, but it wasn't a permanent solution. "I'll figure something out," I told him. "Maybe train someone to take over. Maybe sell the intellectual property to a larger firm, but not yet. This system still needs its creator." That conversation happened 6 months ago, right around the time George announced his retirement. He'd been with Apex for 32 years, working his way up from floor supervisor to VP of operations. He understood manufacturing from the ground up, and he knew the value of keeping good people happy. "They're bringing in someone from outside," he warned me during his retirement dinner. "MBA type, probably going to want to review all our vendor relationships. Just wanted to give you a heads up." I thanked him for the warning, but I wasn't particularly worried. The numbers spoke for themselves. 4 years of flawless operation, millions in documented savings, 0 quality incidents. Any rational business person would see the value in maintaining our partnership. Then Jessica Morgan arrived 3 weeks later with her MBA from Harvard and her tablet that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Her first communication wasn't a greeting or introduction. Subject line, third-party vendor cost analysis. The email was pure corporate optimization language about recurring expenditure structures and dependency risk reduction. My invoice hadn't changed in 4 years. Same amount, same delivery schedule, same scope of work, but Jessica saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately assumed there was fat to trim. She had no context for what my system actually did, no understanding of the value it created, and no respect for the relationship George and I had built. I replied professionally, attaching the original contract and a summary of system performance metrics over the past 48 months. Her response came back within 2 hours, and I knew immediately that this was going to be a problem. "Need to schedule comprehensive review of all external service dependencies. Please prepare full documentation for internal assessment of operational systems." Operational systems, that phrase told me everything I needed to know about Jessica Morgan. She was the type who thought complex quality infrastructure could be understood by reviewing slide decks and reading executive summaries. She had no concept that what she called operational systems was actually custom-built hardware sitting in my garage workshop 20 minutes away. I forwarded her email to Susan that evening. She read it over dinner, shaking her head. "She wants to steal your system. She thinks she can," I said. "Probably assumes it's just software running on their servers. Has no idea what she's actually dealing with." Susan had lived through my transition from Ford to independent consulting. She'd watched me build systems in our garage, seen the late nights debugging code and testing hardware interfaces. She understood better than anyone that what I'd created wasn't just intellectual property. It was years of accumulated expertise that couldn't be transferred to the lowest bidder. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, the same expression I'd given Jessica in that conference room. Let her educate herself. 4 days later, the email arrived that confirmed my suspicions. Subject line, System Architecture Documentation Request. Jessica wanted a complete copy of the system for internal assessment and potential transition planning. She didn't want to review our service agreement. She wanted to take my system and eliminate the monthly payment. I sent back a response that was technically accurate and deliberately unhelpful. "Happy to provide all materials included under your current operational license." Then I walked out to my garage workshop, sat down at the master control panel I built specifically for Apex's system, and started preparing Jessica Morgan's education in the difference between access and ownership. The workshop had been my sanctuary for 4 years. Custom hardware interfaces lined the walls, each one controlling a specific subsystem within Apex's quality network. Predictive algorithms running on servers I owned and maintained. Communication protocols I designed to coordinate data flow across 6 facilities. Every component built by hand, tested until it performed flawlessly. Kevin had helped me install some of the newer monitoring equipment during his last visit home. He still thought I was being stubborn about modernization, but even he was impressed by the technical sophistication of what I'd built. "Dad, this is like mission control for manufacturing," he'd said, watching real-time data streams from multiple production lines. "But why didn't you just use cloud services? It would be so much easier to scale and maintain, because clouds can disappear," I told him. "But hardware you own and control is always there when you need it." He laughed. "That's very Marine Corps of you." He was right. Everything I'd learned about system reliability came from military experience. You don't trust critical operations to infrastructure you don't control. You build redundancy into every vital function. And you always have a contingency plan when the primary system fails. 3 days after my documentation response, another email landed. Subject line: intellectual property clarification. Jessica wanted written confirmation that all operational software logic belonged to Apex Manufacturing. I screenshot the relevant contract clause and sent it back. Bold text impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remains the exclusive property of Marcus Thompson, licensed for operational use only. George Martinez had understood that clause perfectly when he signed it 4 years ago. He'd even had Apex's legal team review the entire contract before approval. You don't buy a custom quality system like you're purchasing office equipment. You license access to infrastructure that took years to develop and requires constant maintenance from the person who built it. Jessica's response arrived 6 hours later. "We will be transitioning to internal systems management effective immediately. Final payment will be processed per contract terms. Thank you for your service." That was it. No discussion, no transition planning, no acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of a 6-facility manufacturing operation. Just corporate speak for "you're done and we're keeping your work." I sat at my desk for a long moment staring at that email. Then I called Susan. "She just fired me," I said. "Terminated the contract and expects me to hand over the system. Can she do that?" "She thinks she can, but she's about to learn something about assumptions." That evening, I walked out to my workshop and spent an hour reviewing every connection, every data stream, every control protocol that linked my hardware to Apex's operation. In the military, we called this pre-mission planning. Understanding exactly what would happen when you executed a specific action. Jessica Morgan thought the system was software running on Apex servers. She had no idea that every quality prediction, every statistical analysis, every coordination signal was actually generated by hardware in my possession. When I terminated the connection, their entire quality network would go blind. The beauty of the system I designed was its graceful failure mode. It wouldn't crash dramatically or throw error messages. User interfaces would continue displaying the last cached data, creating the illusion that everything was still working. But underneath, nothing would actually be communicating with anything else. Floor supervisors would see normal status indicators while their production lines fell out of synchronization. Quality inspectors would receive outdated assignments, while defects accumulated at measurement stations. Statistical process control would show perfect trending while actual parameters drifted beyond specification limits. It would take hours, maybe days, for them to realize that their dashboards were showing historical data, while their actual operation collapsed in real time. 6 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Systems transition meeting Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. No agenda, no context, just a meeting title suggesting she expected this to be a simple handoff conversation. I spent Thursday evening preparing for the call. Professional appearance, background showing my certifications and service awards, documentation organized and ready. Susan brought me coffee and sat down beside my desk. "You're really going to do this?" "She made the choice when she tried to steal my work," I said. "I'm just helping her understand the consequences." The next morning, I joined the video call 3 minutes early, watching other participants log in. Jessica arrived 2 minutes late, settling into her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who thinks they've solved a complex problem with simple cost cutting. Terry Wilson from IT joined next, then a woman who looked fresh out of business school, tablet in hand, ready to take notes. George Martinez was nowhere on the call. Not surprising. He'd probably advised against this entire approach, and Jessica had decided his operational experience wasn't relevant to modern business strategy. Marcus, thanks for joining. Jessica began, her tone suggesting this was routine administrative business. We've made the decision to bring quality systems management in-house. Appreciate all your work up to this point, but we're ready to assume direct operational control. You're terminating the license agreement, I asked, correct? Jessica said, leaning back like she expected praise for her decisive leadership. We'll need complete handover of all code repositories, system architecture documents, and back-end credentials. Standard transition process. You're not licensed to access the core infrastructure, I said calmly. Your agreement covers operational use of system outputs. You never purchased ownership rights. Jessica's confident smile faltered slightly. We paid for development of this system, Marcus. That makes it company intellectual property. You paid for operational access to a functioning quality network, I replied. You never bought the underlying technology. That distinction is outlined explicitly in Section 7 of your contract. She glanced off camera, probably pulling up the contract on another screen. I waited while she scanned through language that George Martinez had reviewed carefully with their legal team 4 years ago. Look, she said, attempting to regain control. We understand there might be some technical nuances here, but we're prepared to handle operations internally going forward. Just provide whatever documentation you have so we can maintain service continuity. I'll provide everything you're legally entitled to receive, I said. Nothing more. The silence across the video call was sharp. Terry looked uncomfortable. The note-taker stopped typing. Jessica's jaw tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the smooth asset transfer she'd planned. That'll be fine, she said curtly, trying to end the call quickly. We'll expect full delivery by close of business today. I didn't respond, just sat there looking directly into the camera while she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could complicate her timeline further. The screen went black. I closed my laptop and walked out to my workshop. Every indicator showed green. Quality prediction algorithms running flawlessly across 89 stations. Statistical process control updating in real time. Defect prevention protocols synchronized across 6 facilities, the entire Apex quality network running exactly as I designed it. Then I started building Jessica's transition package, professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical language. User interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. Everything polished and official and completely useless without access to the underlying control systems. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. I attached it to an email with a single line, system interface documentation provided per contract termination. Back-end infrastructure access not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Apex's corporate email system where Jessica would soon discover the difference between owning a control panel and owning the engine. Then I walked back to my workshop, sat down at the master control console, and placed my hand on the primary power relay. Susan appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. You're really going to do this? She chose this path, I said. I'm just following it to its logical conclusion. The next morning, I drove to Miller's Diner like it was any other Friday. Small place near the interstate where Linda Foster had been serving me the same order for 3 years. Black coffee, wheat toast, scrambled eggs. She nodded when I walked in, poured the coffee without asking, and left me alone with my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main operations dashboard. Every indicator glowed green. Quality prediction flowing smoothly through 89 synchronized stations across 6 facilities. Everything Jessica Morgan thought she now controlled was actually flowing through the custom hardware sitting in my garage workshop 20 minutes away. At 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica. Having difficulty accessing root management interface. Please provide admin credentials immediately. I stared at the message for about 15 seconds, then deleted it without responding. At 9:52 a.m., I toggled the master relay switch. The dashboard on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Quality prediction stopped mid-cycle. The entire Apex manufacturing network just stopped communicating. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 4 years of perfect quality control die in complete silence. The system didn't crash or throw error messages. I designed it to disconnect gracefully, just like we plan tactical withdrawals in the Marines. No alarms, no warning indicators, no dramatic shutdown sequences, just clean separation from all operational control. For the first 30 minutes, nothing appeared wrong to casual observation. Dashboard displays still showed green status indicators. Floor supervisors looking at their screens would see normal quality metrics and measurement readings. But no new coordination data was flowing anywhere. By 10:35 a.m., the ripple effects became visible across the network. Quality bottlenecks at 9 major stations. Measurement conflicts forming at inspection points. Production schedules falling behind as supervisors tried to manually coordinate operations that had been automated for 4 years. At 10:44 a.m., the first confused email arrived. Danny Martinez, one of their senior floor supervisors, former Army, good instincts. Quick question, data sync delay? He'd figure out what was happening eventually, but right now he was just seeing symptoms. By 11:25 a.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. Quality control gridlock at 14 major checkpoints across 3 states. Statistical process control conflicts at 23 different measurement stations. The smooth operation that had run flawlessly for 4 years was falling apart in real time. At 11:32 a.m., an email arrived with red priority flags. Urgent, critical system failure. Multiple operational conflicts, no response from prediction algorithms, quality assignments completely desynchronized. Conservative estimate, $18,000 in daily losses from halted production and quality violations. My phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, blocked calls, increasingly desperate messages. The panic was beginning to set in. At 12:53 p.m., the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call 1 p.m. Eastern. Immediate response required. I joined the call at 12:57 p.m. Scott Turner, some kind of senior VP, looked like he'd aged 5 years in the last 3 hours. Legal counsel appeared along with Danny Martinez, who looked exhausted but unsurprised. Jessica Morgan was in a small window at the bottom of the screen. Muted microphone. Body language suggesting she'd been removed from leadership of her own crisis. Marcus, appreciate you joining on short notice. Scott cleared his throat. We're dealing with what appears to be a significant operational disruption. I nodded once. Your service agreement was terminated yesterday. Emergency response pricing applies for immediate restoration. The negotiation was brief and decisive. Wire transfer, full payment, no modifications to terms. 27 minutes later, my banking app chimed. Payment confirmed. I walked out to my workshop and flipped the relay switch back to active position. Every screen lit up with green indicators. The 6-facility quality network came back to life like someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a major industrial operation. 3 weeks later, a new email arrived from Steve Davis, VP of Strategic Operations. 3-year exclusive contract with enhanced compensation, explicit acknowledgement of intellectual property ownership, and a respectful tone that acknowledged what had happened. Kevin called me that evening. Dad, I heard about what happened at Apex through the Tesla supplier network. Word is you shut down their entire operation for half a day. Sometimes people need to learn the difference between using something and owning it. I said, I get it now, he said quietly. Experience isn't just knowing how to do something, it's understanding all the ways it can go wrong. 6 months later, I had inquiries from companies in Detroit, Louisville, and Cleveland. They knew what happened with Jessica Morgan. They knew what occurred when someone tried to take custom infrastructure from someone who understood the difference between access and ownership. If you're listening to this and you've ever built something valuable, remember this. Protect what you create before you're forced to defend it. Know the difference between licensing access and surrendering ownership. And when someone tries to take what's yours, don't get loud or emotional. Just smile calmly and say, I'm afraid I can't do that. It's not yours to take. Then watch them learn the difference between confidence and control. Experience isn't just years on the job, it's the wisdom to build systems so solid that even the people trying to steal them can't break them when you're gone.